Thank you so much for giving your time today for a webinar on assistive technologies. Um, First of all, an apology from Diz, as is the want of youth justice professionals. He's been called away on urgent business. However, I have a number of slides from his presentation. I know what he was going to say, and so I'll hopefully represent him fairly and honestly. This will be a slightly different webinar to usual. It'll be a bit shorter because I hope uh, that at the end of the webinar, you have a chance to play for yourself. Try out some of the built-in EdTech that is now available readily, um, and just to give yourself a flavour and a taste of what is possibly to come. So please see this as an entree, if you like, rather than the main course, which I hope will follow. I think we have a good number joined, which is lovely. This recording will also be made available to the 260 people who have registered for these events. So within a few days, my colleague Azadeh will be circulating a recording of this, which you can then use with colleagues to promote further thinking and discourse on the subject. So we're going to look at how um, assistive technologies can transform communication outcomes for young people and adults. Um, where's this all come from? I'd like to describe it as a fortunate collision. I started life in schools. I've always worked in tough schools. And after 30 years, 10 of which were headship, I've kind of developed quite a profound understanding of why children fail in education, especially in tough environments, but also an understanding of what could be done to counter that. I've been incredibly fortunate for the last decade to be working closely with the Association of Youth Offending Team Managers, and we've developed a shared understanding of how we could more successfully meet complex needs of young people who enter youth justice pathways, and as you all well know, that is nearly every single one. And also our work now is extending to trying to prevent young people from entering these pathways altogether. The last 3 years I have enjoyed immensely working for Microlink Education. I've developed a growing understanding of how assistive technologies can transform learning outcomes for all children and not just those with identified needs. This is a critical aspect of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to look at the hidden speech, language, and communication needs in youth justice pathways and look at the evidence. We're going to ask why. And we're also going to explore some of the solutions. We'll look a little bit at models of how we meet disabilities in society. And then we are going to look at the assistive technologies. So I hope you will see a progressive journey, if you like, of thinking behind it, because it's no good just saying this works or saying this is the new idea. It should be founded in evidence-based practice. And I hope you will get that in the flow of the next 30 minutes. Okay. I call it a national disgrace, but here is some quite profound observations from the field from a very close colleague of mine, Dr. Alex Chard. He worked across the West Midlands, looked in detail into running the videos of children's lives who ended up in the criminal justice system. We know about the collisions of needs, but this really is quite a profound undertaking. The study basically showed the intense needs of 80 young people who were studied in detail. Of that, 8 out in 10, 8 in 10 of these were subject to school inclusion or attended multiple secondary schools. The levels of abuse those children had suffered over their lives led Alex to call his report punishing abuse, because we appear to be punishing children who've been abused through being involved in youth justice. Call it a national disgrace. That's what I call it. Let's have a quick look at headline national suspension and permanent exclusion rates. This was from the last available government stats that came out for 2021-2022. Of 578,000 suspensions in the year. That amounts to 3,000 suspensions per school day over the course of 192 school days in a year. I find that quite utterly remarkable. And if we draw down into the statistics a little bit further, and please investigate this for yourself. I know some of you are interested in disproportionality and collisions of need, but I'm just focusing here on young people with identified special educational needs. If we analyze the statistics and tot it up, children with special educational needs are nearly 8 times more likely to get permanently excluded from school than children without identified needs. But is that the full story? No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And this is where my colleague, Diz, who's done an awful lot of work in this area, has supplied some additional information, because national statistics about young people identified with special educational needs do not tell the whole story. As you can see by some of the stats on this page, and as many of you have testified time and time again, the first opportunity to properly assess a child and identify the needs that child has is at the point of entry to a youth justice pathway. Back in 2007, Brian et al. Disclosed that 60% of young people involved in youth justice system had speech and language communication needs, which were largely unrecognised. The YJB Asset Plus data shows that SLCN, speech, language and communication needs, is regarded as a hidden disability and not always accurately recognised prior to being assessed. The underlying, if you like, communication needs of children extend into groups of young people who have emotional and behavioural disorders. Milton Keynes went further. They've decided to look in detail at young people who have been identified as at risk of entering youth justice pathways. And so what they have started to do in Milton Keynes, and this was the subject of an earlier webinar that we have, is that they have started to do detailed and comprehensive speech and language communication needs assessment of young people deemed at risk of entering a youth justice pathway. I won't go through every one of the statistics, but the bottom one is the key, I think. So young people in school who are getting fixed term exclusions at risk of becoming permanently excluded, they looked in detail at this cohort. Out of the 31 children that were assessed, 96% of these children were assessed as having identified speech, language and communication needs. Backed up by an analysis year on year of young people who had been assessed at risk of entering youth justice pathways or within them. Diz calls it a road to nowhere. And the stats are quite bleak. If untreated, 33% of children with communication needs will develop mental illness, and over 50% will become involved in criminal activity. That's from the Breakthrough Britain report. And the bottom one we know is the stark reality. The number of unemployed young men with speech language communication needs is profound, and also the low levels of literacy in the adult population in prisons is another testament to what is a bleak journey for unrecognised unaddressed needs, mainly in the area of communication. So, what's the problem? Why is this happening? Well, I feel as a head teacher and also someone connected to education pathways nationally and internationally, I do not believe the full impact of complex needs are being fully appreciated, understood, or met. By complex needs, as you can see by the diagram in the right, it is where collisions occur, collisions between special educational needs, physical and mental health and well-being issues, and social and structural disadvantage, disproportionalities, gender, poverty, family dysfunction. It all adds up. And whereas a child might be sub-threshold for social care or sub-threshold for CAMS, if it's conflated in other areas, we see those all as flags of desperation waving for help. The other factor is that many of these disabilities can be considered as hidden. You look into the eyes of the child and you do not necessarily see the reasons for why the child is behaving the way they do. Sometimes the child will not realize that they have a disability. They just realize they're different from some of their colleagues. Their parents might not know this either. And they often disguise or camouflage their disability behind layer upon layer of front. It's their way of getting their personal and social power back. But sometimes that personal power reclaim is at the expense of relationships or even their freedom. Many of these children end up in a school system which seems to silo off sometimes special educational needs from pastoral or disciplinary issues. If they get into the wrong silo too early, then the young person could be excluded for disruptive behavior without the reasons for that behavior being fully understood or addressed. And I also have to say, as an educationalist, I feel a curriculum and an assessment regime that venerates academic powers and the ability to understand and express learning through the written word and the read word is a barrier, a huge barrier to success for many, many children. I applaud a constant and committed response to raising standards. I applaud that hugely. But maybe, just maybe, the toolkit we use needs to be considered again. So let's go on the front foot here. Let's look at what some of the solutions could be. Will giving young people who have some of these literacy concerns, would it help giving them more literacy lessons? Will it really work? Well, if there's an underlying issue, which could be developmental language disorder or dyslexia or a whole range of other neurodiverse conditions, then maybe just giving them more of what has failed them in the past will not necessarily work. As young people bubble through the system, we are getting smarter at multi-agency working to understand and meet the complex needs. It is happening, not consistently and not to high quality in every single area, but we have, through our Child First Partnership Practice webinars, seen some fantastic practice emerging. Another solution might be to assess every child for dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, ASD, ADHD. And Matt Hancock, bless him, has been campaigning hard for the assessment of children at an early age for dyslexia in particular, having been a dyslexic student himself. I do not believe that is a sustainable solution if you think about the cost of doing this And if it's not just dyslexia, what about the other conditions? Um, and what about um, some conditions which are developmental, which are expressed perhaps after an assessment's been made? So look, I don't believe personally that assessing every single child in the system uh, with detailed and progressive and comprehensive assessment tools may well be the affordable societal solution. We could, of course, ban permanent exclusions, couldn't we? And make sure that every child remains in the protective uh, factor of being in mainstream education. Not a chance of this happening. We could change the curriculum to widen opportunity and access to a broader skill set. Maybe with assessment not reliant on written expression of knowledge and skills. Well, I was CEO of Asdan Education for 3 years. We fought very hard back in 2010 to have these qualifications included within league tables. Sadly, the political climate at the time meant that we were removed from being counted in such league tables at the expense, of course, of an academic way forward. So um, maybe in the future something might change here, but at the moment it doesn't look possible. Is there another way? And yes, this is where I feel we have an opportunity, and it comes from uh, a sound place, a sound place. The sound place is looking at the social model of disability. Um, I'll stop for a moment. Someone said, why can't we ban permanent exclusions? I think politically, it would not be a vote winner with the middle classes. Pure and simple. I think there's a political reason why not. And I particularly would like to see schools change their attitude to permanent exclusion. And it is happening, but it's not happening quickly enough. Sorry about that. Discourse. Yes, by the way, if you have got questions, please put them in the chat pane or observations. I welcome them and I will try and answer as many as possible. Okay, so we're looking at the social model of disability here as a way of addressing some of the systemic barriers that exist within schools and society. And this is about building an enabling world. I'll share some slides with you. I was invited to Florida in February to share my thinking about an enabling world. So let's just rehearse the key arguments. The prevalent traditional medical model of disability talks about a problem being the disabled person. They cannot hear, they cannot see, they have medical conditions, they might not be able to learn as quickly as their peers, they might be confined to a wheelchair. The problem lies with a disabled person that needs to be fixed. But there's a more progressive model coming through now, and it's called the social model of disability. The social model of disability says that disability is caused. Disability is caused by the way society is organized rather than incumbent within a person's impairment or difference. It looks at ways of removing barriers that restrict life choices for disabled people. And when the barriers are removed or addressed, disabled people can be independent and equal in society with choice and control over their lives. So rather than seeing the individual as the problem, we see the disabling world as the problem. And by addressing the solutions in an enabling world sense, you slowly start to make progress by addressing those issues that isolate and barrier progress. And we all benefit from an enabling world. One in the early days, I think of the 70s, well, automatic doors that opened were just on Star Trek. But nearly every public building now has automated doors that open as a person approaches it. Fantastic for wheelchair users. Even better for someone pushing a pushchair or someone with heavy luggage. We have double opening doors on the underground system for the ticketless barriers. These are, if you like, adjustments which are made that are enabling people to access a service or a physical environment. Now, this is a wonderful cartoon, and I really will encourage you to share it with people. Um, there's a janitor shoveling snow, saying, the young person in the wheelchair is saying, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the janitor saying, "I'll get to the ramp in a minute, but I'll just clear the steps first so that the other kids can get in." And the wheelchair user is simply saying, "But if you shovel the ramp first, we can all get in." It's a wonderful, if you like, model of what we mean by, if you like, removing those barriers and adopting the social model of disability. Now, it's obvious to see the social model of disability at work in the physical environment, but let's take it into a different way of thinking. And this is about the social model of disability in a broader systemic sense to address pathways of communication that will support learning, working, and living. So, in other words, using assistive technologies to open up pathways of communication. This thinking has been around for some time. The communication and SPLD trust, many of us will remember their sentence trouble training pack. They came up with this diamond, the communication diamond, to illustrate that actually by meeting the communication needs full on, a whole range of young people with a range of what some would see as debilitating disorders can be met. And as Diz Minnitt said, using speech language therapists to probe communication needs can be a window to uncovering sometimes complex and multifaceted underlying issues that are the major barriers to securing better outcomes. Um, we must always remember children are seldom just dyslexic or just ADHD or just autistic spectrum disorders. We must recognize what we call neurodiversity. We are also getting much smarter today about DLD, developmental language disorder. At the last AYM conference, there was a marvelous presentation on that. Communication accessibility could be the key to agency, understanding, well-being, and independent living for many of the children so conflicted. So let's give an example of it. Moving, as we can see, from equality through to what we call equity. Maybe a good example of this cartoon there, everyone given the same box. Let's give every child in the class an iPad. Okay, that assumes everyone will benefit from the support, but as you can see, some people still can't see over the fence. An equitous solution is to give equal access, is to give some individuals more support, and maybe, just maybe, giving every child with identified SEND access to assistive technologies on their iPad. Great, wonderful. But as we've seen in our learning journey so far, a great number of some of the most conflicted young people have needs which are sometimes hidden. How can we meet their needs? There's an extension to this wonderful cartoon, and that is when you get rid of the fence. When you get rid of the fence. And the way we can do that in schools is by creating a culture, an environment, and classroom practice that empowers the use of assistive technologies so that every child, even those that have been, as we like to say today, disabled by circumstance, can access the quality teaching that's going on. In other words, if we make assistive technologies as ubiquitous in classrooms as pens and pencils, then children will reach for the right tool at the right time. So what are assistive technologies? Well, assistive technologies have been around for a very long time. These are technologies that enable greater independence by users, allowing them to achieve and perform tasks that maybe previously they were unable to do or found difficult. The traditional and the long-lasting, um, if you like, technologies range from mobility aids, physical tools, hearing aids, visual impairment systems, physical modifications. We're familiar with that. But now we are looking at IT systems that can have a profound impact on progress and access to communication. Voice recognition programs, screen readers, screen enlargement applications, captioning, speech to text, text to speech, cognitive support and development to overcome specific learning difficulties. And that quote from Judy Human is absolutely profound. For people without disabilities, technology makes things easier. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. So if we adopt accessible technologies that embrace universal design principles, a bit like the double opening doors and the automatic doors that we see at tube stations, if these assistive technologies become as ubiquitous in classrooms, then children will use them if and when required. And my preface to all of this work is, well, if it can work in the classroom, why not beyond the classroom too? Why not to the young people who we have in our youth justice pathways? After 2 successful DfE-funded projects, which have involved over 200 schools, Microlink has gone ahead and developed further a package that we're calling Be That Teacher. Note the subtle use of AT in that. We are incredibly fortunate that we've attracted generous sponsorship from HSBC to roll it out free to another 100 schools. We are in action and we know it is working. So what are these technologies? Well, let me just describe what's been happening in the world of assistive technology, and I'm going to use the example of something called Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is a tool that has been developed by Microsoft, and in the earliest days, a version of Immersive Reader was found in every package of Word on your computers. Yes, it's been hidden in plain sight for the last 10 years. Immersive Reader in the early days was a simple, uh, uh, if you like, artificial intelligence, simple one on your computer, which could take the words that were written and speak them. It was very artificial, but it worked. And also there was a dictate function built into Word, so your words could come out as speech, but again, it wasn't that powerful. Then the cloud came along. The cloud came along. In other words, using immense processing power remotely so that it doesn't rely on your device to make things happen. Fast, unbelievably fast. And then deliver it to you through the web. And this is where Office 365 comes in. Office 365 is an incredibly powerful way of accessing some of the advanced features in the Microsoft package. We'll look at this in a minute. And then what's happened is that other apps have taken the processing power of Immersive Reader, making it available on, if you like, non-Office 365 systems. Helper Bird is a great example of that. There is now an iPad and iPhone version of it, and now Microsoft are putting things like Immersive Reader built in to browsers such as Edge. You're probably, if you don't know Immersive Reader, wondering what the fuss is all about. I'll show you in a minute. But what is wonderful is that we know this program works in schools. These are some of the comments made in the first 2 years of our involvement with school communities. Young people are benefiting already in primary schools and in secondary schools from using some of the built-in tools that are now free and readily available. Head teachers have enjoyed the impact it's had in their school communities, and some of the apps that we see are having a profound impact. It's wonderful when young children are going up to head teachers and say, "Hey, I'm starting to use Immersive Reader." Isn't that wonderful? And that last comment is really quite profound. Starting to use voice to text with some of the special education needs children, and some of the parents seeing for the first time in print what their children are thinking, has been touching and a hugely emotive experience. I think there is real potential of spreading this learning throughout youth justice pathways. So, what is there in Immersive Reader? I hope you will hear this video in a moment that I'm going to play. It's by a guy called Mike Thorson. I know Mike well. He is one of the Microsoft advocates. He does talk rather fast, but what you're going to see is a video which is only about 3 minutes long, about the capabilities of Immersive Reader. And this is something you all have if you have Office 365. Every single person in schools could have access to Office 365. Most of you have it. This is the online version of Word. So here we go. He talks fast, but I hope you get a sense of the power of this free technology.
I'll be demoing the Immersive Reader, which is built in and free and part of many Office apps. I'm going to launch Word for Web right here. Now I'm in the free version of Word, and I'm going to go to the View menu, and I'm going to click Immersive Reader. Now I'm in the Immersive Reader, and what we did was we took the latest science and research around reading, and we focused inclusively to help solve all sorts of challenges around reading. So first off, let's make this full screen. In the upper right, I'll click here. Now at the bottom, you're going to see a play button, and when I click play, you're going to see text-to-speech.
The study of Earth's landforms is called physical geography.
Now that's a high-grade neural text-to-speech voice, and also text-to-speech is now built into Word along with word and line highlighting, which is a proven technique for some people to help with focus and comprehension. I can click voice settings at the bottom and make it faster or slower voice, and I can choose male or female voice. I can also change the way the page looks. So when I click on the AA in the upper right, I've got some options. So we know for some people who experience visual crowding, if I click increase spacing, this can reduce visual crowding for some people. I can change the background colors of the themes. So many people don't like to read with a white or a black background. I've got many options to choose from, and these are tuned for accessibility. So I can choose a color theme that works for me. I chose Comic Sans. This is designed for younger readers. Many students prefer the way the A and the G are written, and that's how younger children are taught to write. I can make the text size much bigger if I scroll up here. So think about short line mode, or think about English language learners, or think about students with vision impairments. It's really easy to customize the way that the page looks. Now next up, I'm going to click on grammar options. And we know there's a very common technique breaking words into syllables, and I'll clap my hands like this. Syllables. Many students are taught that way. Some students with dyslexia will prefer syllable breakdowns. So by clicking syllables, I can break the words into syllables with a single click. I can highlight the nouns on the page with a single click, or the verbs. I can highlight the adjectives or even the adverbs. And I can customize the colors very easily. Maybe I want the verbs to be red, and maybe I want to turn a couple of these off, and maybe I want to show labels, which puts a visual distinguishing mark in case I have challenges with colors. So you can see it's very personalizable and it's easy for me to do. Next up, I'm going to make the background color blue, and I'm going to go to reading preferences and choose line focus. Now let's think about students with ADHD, or maybe students with cerebral palsy, students with dyslexia. This is like a reading ruler, like an overlay. And see how I can scroll up and down with these arrows? I can read it out loud.
Glaciers or rivers. Landforms are sometimes called physical features.
So it's really easy to customize. And I can choose 1 line or 3 lines or 5 lines. It's really easy to customize in a way that works best for me. I can click on a word and get a picture. So we call this picture dictionary.
Earths. Earths.
Click on mountains.
Mountains.
Or valleys.
Valleys.
I can also translate, and this is really powerful. We can translate in over 67 languages here. And so I've chosen Spanish, and I'm going to turn on by word, and now I'm going to click on Earth.
Earths.
English.
Tierra.
Spanish. English.
Mountains.
Montañas.
But I can also translate the entire document. So I'm going to click on Document, and now let's read that out loud.
El estudio de las formas terrestres de la Tierra se llama geografía
And if that's too fast, I can slow it down a little bit.
física. Las formas de tierra pueden...
And I can go back to the original or Spanish, and you can see it still highlights the parts of speech, the nouns, the verbs, and the adjectives in Spanish. So all of these capabilities are built right into the Immersive Reader, which is free and part of Word. It's also in Teams, OneNote, Flipgrid, Minecraft, Forms, Whiteboard, and Office Lens.
If you haven't seen that before, I really hope it's blown your mind. A translation into many languages, line focus, readability, and color changes for young people who struggle to read. It is sensational. I'm going to be drawing this webinar to a close quite soon. I have previously, and I hope you've all received it, sent out to you a document. And in that document, you will see hyperlinks to this video and many more, which show some of the built-in capabilities of assistive technologies today. So what are the next steps? Well, today's webinar is very much a call to arms, if you like, an opportunity to explore. And I would love you and some of your teams to explore these built-in features. I think it could be transformational for some of the young people that you have on a daily basis. There are some amazing apps as well, because young people are sometimes wedded to their mobile phones. And there are some amazing apps on mobile phones today which enable you to do incredible things. Now, again, I'm going to demonstrate to you now. This is dangerous, isn't it? Trying to do something live, but I'm going to try and do it for you now. This is an app called Lookout Assistive Vision. It was originally built for people who are blind. It's a free app. There's a little symbol there at the top that says Lookout. It's a pair of glasses. It's totally free. It uses G5 connectivity. All you need to do is point it at a page. Let's see if it works. Here we go.
Mute. Stop video. What's new in app? Q&A, you are screen sharing. 0024B. Next, BHAP's new in app.
It's reading the
Next
page.
steps.
It's reading the page for me.
331. Chat. Q&A.
Try and stop it now. There we go. Now, just think about a young person who might be a slow reader, having their mobile phone out as they usually are, but with headphones or an earpiece. They're not sure about what a document says. All they can do is point their camera at it to get an instant translation. I think for some of the older children that we deal with who struggle with reading, wow, what a powerful tool. I also think, though, just throwing this tool at your staff and the kids doesn't always work. And it's one of the reasons why we have developed a 6-month professional development program so that individuals in schools can actually understand and embed the technology for themselves. We would like to do the same for youth offending teams. And we're currently seeking funding to roll out another wave of free training. This current wave of free training starts in November. And we would really, really, really love you as youth justice professionals to just perhaps sign up your team through an expression of interest form. I will send out the link with a recording to this video and this slide pack as well in the coming days. We have enjoyed working hugely with youth offending services for the last decade, and we would love to extend our work to that. So don't think about it as being that teacher. Let's think about it as being that youth justice professional. Thank you so much for listening. As I said, I'm not going to dwell any longer on this webinar. I'm simply going to say, please, 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 go off, play for yourselves, and try things out. And if you're interested, either use the expression of interest form, as I've shared it before, or contact me directly. And my details are going to be there. I hope that was powerful. And if you have any comments, please, please, please leave them in either the chat pane or the Q&A function. I'll be online now for about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes or so before I shut down the recording and shut down the webinar. Thank you so much for attending. Hope you found that useful. Thank you, Francis, for saying that it was useful. And I really hope that we can continue the journey together through the expression of interest form with Microlink Education working in partnership with you to bring assistive technologies into youth justice pathways. Thank you so much for your time and goodbye.